Hi Year 5, I trust you're still well. So this is English Lesson 3, week beginning the 1st of June. And last lesson we really spoke about why was it successful that the author of The Tornado Chasers, Ross Montgomery, began the story by a flashback of something that happened in the future. And then in chapter 2 went back in time. Why was it good that the author started with that kind of dramatic and exciting beginning to the story? So you should have written a paragraph about that. So we're on to lesson 3. Again, summer skill. I manage shifts in time and place effectively and guide the reader through my text. So we're going to be focusing on this lesson objective to learn why shifts in time happen. So why do they happen? This is really continuing on from your paragraph from yesterday. So this lesson really should answer that for you. Why does this happen? Why do writers jump around sometimes, shifts in time and in place? Why does this happen in order to build a story and take the story forward? Okay, firstly, and I've got this list here. Okay, so you can see this. It'll be on the website for you. So create the greatest response from the reader. So shifts in time are really there to take us to a point in a story where the writer wants the reader to have some emotional effect from reading that particular scene. Okay, so a writer will flash back to an emotional event or a dramatic scene in a story, and they may continue to flash back to that as the story unfolds and give more information about it, just to keep the reader emotionally attached and affected by the story. Okay, it's to pull on the reader's emotions as they read it. Right, there's no good shifting forward or back in time to a boring event. Okay, shifts in time just for the sake of it. No, they've got to have a purpose. So why are you taking us back in chapter 1? Why does the Tornado Chasers start chapter 1 with a room that's bare and a bed that's covered with chicken wire and windows that are closed with shutters? And it seems cruel, it's harsh, it's confusing. Well, because the reader wants the writer wants the reader rather to emotionally feel affected by chapter 1 and to question a lot in their minds, to keep them curious about what's going to happen in the future. Okay, it makes them want to read on. So there's a reason why that shift in time happened. And then in chapter 2, there's a reason why the writer chose to go back to the beginning, the shift in time again, to the very start, and then the story begins to unfold. So these shifts in time are not random. Okay, they're for a purpose. They're for a reason, and they're really to create a response from the reader. You always, as a writer, you have to be thinking about what impact, what effect are you going to have on the reader, okay, as they read your story. All right, it's not just I'm going to write a story, it's what impact is your story going to have on the reader. When you shift forward or back in time to a dramatic event in your story, what effect do you want that to have on the reader? Do you want them to be sad? Do you want them to be confused? Do you want them to, what do you want the reader to respond? What response do you want the reader to have? Because you have taken them back to that time or forward to that time. Okay, so that's really important. So why do writers do it? They do it to really affect the reader emotionally. They move forwards and backwards in time for emotional response from the reader. They don't necessarily move in order of time from beginning to end. Time can jump around in stories. Okay, chapter 11 of The Tornado Chasers is told in chapter 1 to create more emotional effect on the reader. I've already said this. At the start of the story and draw the reader in at the very beginning. Okay, each scene in the story should be placed where it has the most emotional effect on the reader. So the scene of Owen in his bedroom, that dramatic scene, that sad scene, that confusing scene is put at the very start, because the writer wants to create more emotion in the reader as they read it. Okay, at the very start of the story. Each scene in the story should be placed where it has the most emotional effect on the reader. This may so, for example, chapter 11 we know is kind of the same as what happened in chapter 1. But rather than just keeping it at chapter 11, where yes, there will be an emotional response from the reader, the writers thought, well, this is a really emotional part of the story, chapter 11. I'm just going to take a little snippet of this and I'm going to put it at the start of the story, because I want the reader to feel the same emotion that they're going to feel in chapter 11. I want the same emotion to be felt in the reader at the very start of my story as a hook, to reel them in, as a way of capturing the reader's interest from the very start of the story. Okay? It keeps a fiction story moving forward. So these jumps in time, these shifts in time, are not only for an emotional effect on the reader, but also to take the storyline forward. Okay, so your shift in time needs to have a purpose, not only to affect the reader emotionally, but to take us further on in the story as well. Okay. You can go back and forth via flashbacks. It could be memories, it could be dreams, it could be a retell by another character about something that's happened in the past. Okay. It makes the reader want to read on and find out what's going to happen next. If a story unfolds too quickly and too easily and doesn't cause the reader to question things as to why, then they don't want to read on and find out what's going to happen next, because they already know. Okay, so sometimes good writers, they hide information from the reader and they unveil it a bit at a time. They unravel it as a story unfolds. And you can jump around within the story, back and forth through snippets and flashbacks and memories, or a retell from another character about an event which involves the main character. Okay, it makes a story dramatic and exciting, emotional, interesting to the reader if it unfolds in stages and shifts in time, rather than just following a sequence of beginning, build-up, climax or problem, resolution, ending. Yes, that's how we plan our stories in class. That's how we always plan our stories. But we should never be bound by that plan all the time to the point where at the start you've got your introduction, then you've got your build-up, then you've got your problem, then you've got your resolution, then you've got your conclusion. What you really need to be doing is thinking, can I bring a little snippet of the problem at the start? Or can I bring a little flash of the conclusion at the start for an effect? You know, which part of your story has a real emotional scene in it? Is it in the build-up? Is it in the climax? Is there a real emotional part of your story that you could, you know, put at the start as a flash into the future? You know, to draw the reader in. It's these kind of things, the thought that you have to put into writing. Okay, so here are some examples at the bottom. This is an example that I thought of. Say I was writing a story now, okay? This is like a story that I thought about, what I could write, based on shifts in time, to add effect, to add more emotion, okay? So, for example, your character in your story could be a criminal that makes other people's lives a misery. Your story could begin with your character being arrested in a dramatic police chase in chapter 1. So chapter 1 is the start of your story, but it's not actually the beginning of the story. It's actually a moment in the present where your character has been arrested, chased by police and arrested. Okay? Causes the reader to question what's going on, why has he been arrested, who is this person, and when has this happened? What's happened before in this character's childhood? Chapter 2 could be a flashback in the criminal's mind when he is sitting in a prison cell. He could be thinking about his childhood, pondering over his actions, thinking about how he grew up in a rough area, got in with the wrong gang. Remember the first crime he was persuaded to commit by his gang that started his journey in crime, led to this climax of the police chase beginning in chapter 1. Chapter 3 could jump forward in time to the court hearing and the criminal being finally sentenced to years in prison. Chapter 4 could jump to another character, introduce another character, to like a gang member character, who recalls an event to somebody else just before the police chase happens. So that tells us in chapter 4 why the police chase happened in chapter 1. But it's done as a retell by another character, for example. Chapter 5 could jump forward to the moment he escapes from prison. Okay? Chapter 6 could follow on from that, or it could go back to the point of how he escaped from prison. So stories can shift around, okay? They can move. You don't have to have them in a sequence of introduction, build up, problem, resolution, ending, okay? You can go back and forth in shifts of time, but they have to be for a purpose. They have to draw the reader in emotionally, impact the reader emotionally, and they have to make the story, they have to help the storyline to unfold. Okay, so that's what's really important. Okay, moving on then to the main task. Okay, I want you to write a dramatic, emotional start to a story that's actually from the climax. Okay, there's your task. So, in other words, find a really exciting part of a story, which you're one of your favourite stories, a really exciting moment, a climax in your story, and rewrite it so that is your first chapter. Okay, rewrite it so that is the start of your story, and then do a little flashback or a memory that takes us back to the start, okay, of where your story first began, just like the Tornado Chasers does. Okay, so it's just practicing that skill of starting your story. You don't need to write a full story, you just need to write the first paragraph, yeah? The first paragraph of the dramatic event that starts us off, and then your second paragraph could be, a flashback as to what, something that happened just before that main climax, okay? So you're going to practice shifting back and forth in time, writing a couple of paragraphs from one of your favourite stories, from a dramatic part of a story. Okay, so have a go at that, and I'll see you next lesson. Bye.